A warm welcome to all the students. I am Ms. Tanniya Banerjee, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Patna Women's College. Today I will be dealing with the topic Cultural Globalization. But before I begin, we need to understand that what does the word culture mean? So culture is the symbolic construction, articulation, dissemination of meaning, language, music and images. As far as cultural globalization refers, it is the intensification and expansion of cultural flows across the globe. The exploding network of the cultural interconnectedness and the interdependencies in the last decade has led some commentators to suggest that these cultural practices lie at the very heart of the contemporary globalization. The major debate which lies in cultural globalization is about the sameness or the difference. Referring to the diffusion of these Anglo-American values in consumer goods as the Americanization of the world, the proponents of this cultural homogenization thesis, they argue that Western norms and lifestyles are overwhelming more vulnerable cultures. We therefore see that how far these consumer goods, which are the Americanization of the world, are actually leading to more of the homogenization and also less of the cultural hybridity, because it is leading to more of the inculcation of the norms and lifestyle. American sociologist George Ritzer has coined the term McDonaldization to describe the wide-ranging socio-cultural processes by which the principles of the fast food restaurant are coming to dominate more and more sectors of American society as well as the rest of the world. In the long run, we see that this process amounts to imposition of uniform standards that leads to less of the human creativity and also dehumanizes social relations. One particular thoughtful analyst in this group of pessimistic globalizers is Benjamin Barber. In his book Consumed, which was published in 2007, he says that he is against this ethos of infantilization, which is saying that this is a process where the adults are trying to dumb down the children because there is so much of consumerism. So targeting children as consumers has led to the growth of this consumerist good, and also global inequality has led to the stifling growth of markets and of capitalism. So therefore, in order to expand markets and to make a profit, we see that global capitalists are developing more of the homogeneous global products and who are targeting these wealthy young children throughout the world and turning the children into consumers. And this global consumerism has become a soulless, unethical pursuit of profit. Whereas on the other hand, the optimistic globalizers agree with their pessimistic colleagues that cultural globalization generates more of sameness, but also they think that this outcome is a good thing. For example, if we take one of the major social theorists, American social theorist Francis Fukuyama, he is explicitly arguing that the global spread of the Anglo-American values and the lifestyles, it has kind of equated with the Americanization of the world, has led to the expansion of the democracy and free markets. And some of the representatives and thinkers of this camp also consider that they are staunch cosmopolitans who celebrate the internet and the latest digital devices as the harbingers of a homogenized techno culture. On the other hand, there are free market enthusiasts who are also embracing the values of consumer capitalism. Hence, rather than being totally obliterated by the Western consumerist forces of sameness, local difference and particularity still play an important role in creating this unique cultural constellation. Arguing that cultural globalization always takes place in the local context, Robertson, he's kind of rejecting the cultural homogenization thesis, and he's rather talking about this term, the concept called the glocalization. So glocalization is a complex interaction of the global and the local, and this resulting in cultural hybridity cannot just be reduced to sameness or difference. So the entire debate just flows down that it is not talking about the homogenization or heterogeneity, it is more about how there is a mixture of both the traditional as well as the global. So we therefore see that these flows might change the traditional manifestations of the national identity in the direction of a particular or the popular culture which is characterized by sameness, and in others they might foster new expressions of the cultural particularism. In still others, they might encourage forms of cultural hybridity. I'm sure you all are very much aware of the K-pop band or the Blackpink band, and there's so much of admiration of the Chinese or the Thai cuisine which is happening nowadays. Along with it, the Bollywood pop songs which are so familiar in the different parts of the world. So we see that the global cultural flows of our time are generated and directed by the global media empires that rely on the powerful communication technologies to spread their message. Benjamin Barber has argued that this is now the infotainment telesector. I repeat, it is the infotainment telesector, which is a combination of the information and the entertainment. Because today most of the media analysts concede that the emergence of a global commercial media market amounts to the creation of a global oligopoly similar to that of the oil and automotive industries in the early part of the 20th century. The crucial cultural innovators of the earlier decades, such as the independent record labels, the radio station, the movie theaters, newspapers, and the book publishers, they have somehow become very virtually extinct, and they found themselves incapable of competing with the media giants. Given that news is less than half as profitable as entertainment, media firms are increasingly tempted to pursue higher profits by ignoring journalism's much separation of the newsroom practices and business decisions. Partnerships and the alliances between news and entertainment companies are fast becoming the norm, and it is therefore making it more common for the press journalist to cooperate with the newspaper business operations. And therefore, we see that in today's time there is a sustained attack on the professional autonomy of journalism that also has become a very part of cultural globalization. The next topic which we'll be dealing with, apart from the role of the media and the debate, is the globalization of languages. One very direct method of measuring and evaluating the cultural changes brought about by globalization is to study this shifting global pattern of language use. The researchers at the Globalization Research Center at the University of Hawaii, they have identified 5 key variables that influence the globalization of language. The first of it being the number of languages, because we see that the declining number of languages in different parts of the world, it points to a kind of a strengthening of homogenizing the cultural forces, be it the Chinese, the French language which all of the people are learning nowadays. The second is the movements of the people, which is the migration, because with migration people carry their languages with them when they migrate and travel, and migration has actually affected the spread of languages. The third is the foreign language learning and tourism. So foreign language learning and tourism facilitates the spread of languages beyond the cultural boundaries, beyond the national boundaries. The next which we read is the internet languages. The internet has become a global medium for instant communication and quick access to information. So therefore we see that language is very pivotal for cultural globalization, is a key factor in the analysis of the dominance and verity of the languages in international communication. Last but not the least, a very focus is made on the international scientific publications. Now these scientific publications, they contain the language of the global intellectual discourse. Thus it is critically impacting the intellectual communities involved in the production, the reproduction and the circulation of knowledge around the world. One model which posits a clear correlation between the growing global significance of a few languages, particularly when we talk about Chinese, Spanish, English, and the declining number of other languages around the world. Therefore, another model which suggests that the globalization of language does not necessarily mean that our descendants are destined to utilize only a few tongues. Still another thesis talks about the power of the Anglo-American culture industry to make English, or what some commentators called Globish, the global lingua franca of the 21st century. So therefore migration has led to the cultural globalization, and Arjun Appadurai has also argued that English speaking professionals who trace their origin to South Asia but they live somewhere else. So certainly I will leave you with certain aspects to think about this topic, that whether cultural globalization has led to detraditionalization, whether you are a part of global village or the global consciousness, and has there been a converging global consumption pattern, because right now we are in a particular state where you see that even if there is so much focus on English, Chinese and Spanish, on the other hand, the different nations are always talking about nation first, the language nation first. I think in India, when we are talking about bringing back the entire Vedic knowledge, bringing back the entire Sanskrit knowledge, and introducing these courses. So there is a lot of this difference, and there's a lot of debate when in terms of the cultural globalization which is going on. So thank you everyone. I hope this lesson would be very much useful to you, but more than it, I would like you to ponder about few points which I just mentioned. Thank you one and all.